Hi there. My name is Allison Moats, and I am going to be talking with you today about depression and anxiety in teens specifically. Um, we'll talk about some signs and symptoms to look out for, um, and also some intervention ideas that might be helpful, particularly for parents as if you're noticing things in your teen that are concerning you. So first, I just want to talk a little bit about what the prevalence of depression and anxiety in teens are currently. These statistics were just a few of several that I found, and they kind of reflect overall an average of what most of the studies are showing. Approximately 20% of teens will at some point before adulthood experience some form of depression. And at any one given time, 10 to 15% of teens are currently experiencing some form of depression. I would also venture to guess that since the COVID-19 pandemic started, that these numbers are probably higher, just given the effects of the pandemic itself, schools being out and teens being more isolated from their friends. I would guess that some of these numbers are a bit higher currently than maybe when they did these particular studies. As far as anxiety goes, again, these are single statistics that I found but are reflective of lots of other studies that I looked at. Almost 32% of teens have some kind of anxiety disorder, and per the National Institute on Health, approximately 1 in 3 teens will experience an anxiety disorder at some point during their adolescent years before adulthood. So that's almost a third of teens. And again, considering the pandemic, I would venture to guess that these numbers are probably a bit higher currently. So those are just some numbers to give you an idea of how prevalent these things are. I will show you now some of the symptoms that tend to be present. These are not, kids do not have to show all of these symptoms to be diagnosed with depression or anxiety. When we do diagnosing in the manual, there are a certain number of criteria that they have to meet for a formal diagnosis. So these are just lists of symptoms that could be present and things that you can kind of look out for. With depression, obviously one of the signs is a generally depressed mood, and that can look like feeling down, just generally feeling down, sad, empty, hopeless, and in a way that seems out of character, like that, you're noticing that your teen is more down, or more sad, or maybe even isolating a bit from family more so than typical. I know teens in general can be a bit moody at times, and that's normal. These are symptoms that would kind of seem like they were going beyond just typical teenage adolescent moodiness. They may show diminished interest or pleasure in activities that they were once into, so they maybe were really interested and active in sports and now just don't want to, don't feel like it, don't have the motivation. Maybe they were really artistic and doing a lot with art and now are just kind of not as involved, not doing as much, don't seem to enjoy it. Those kinds of of signs of diminished interest or being able to enjoy things. One symptom that can be present, but not for everybody, is significant weight loss or weight gain when they're not trying. And often that involves increases or decreases in appetite. So if you notice that they're suddenly eating a lot more or doing what we call emotional eating, where it's not necessarily that they're hungry, but food has become more of a comfort thing, that might be a sign. Or in the opposite direction, some teens will lose appetite and just don't feel like eating as much and then start to lose weight. And so that can be a sign if you notice a big shift in appetite or weight. Insomnia or hypersomnia, so not sleeping as much, not being able to sleep at night, having trouble either falling asleep or being able to fall asleep and then waking a lot throughout the night. That could be a sign of insomnia. Or again, on the other end of that, hypersomnia, where they're sleeping a lot more. They may get a full night's sleep, still feel groggy, and be sleeping for hours during the day. And either end of that, the insomnia or hypersomnia, can be a sign of depression. Another one is psychomotor agitation or retardation, and that is just kind of a shift in their overall energy level. Like agitation, do they seem kind of on edge, keyed up, maybe even a little irritable, restless? That's the agitation part. At the other end of that, the psychomotor retardation would be like, do they seem more lethargic? Do they seem to move slow or respond slow or kind of process things more slowly? So that's an area to look at. The next one, feelings of worthlessness or excessive guilt, those can come up. Those are feelings that, we tend from time to time have anyway as an emotion, and sometimes that's kind of a normal response to a situation when it's temporary. When you probably would be more concerned is if you notice that it's becoming a pattern or lasting over a longer period of time, like months. If they just seem to be really down on themselves, or if they're feeling excessive guilt about things that aren't even their fault, but they're interpreting it that way. That's probably when you want to take a little closer look at that. Depression can affect ability to concentrate or make decisions. So teens in particular, may have trouble focusing at school. They may kind of feel like they just can't concentrate for any period of time or stay focused on one task. And it might be harder for them to make decisions where usually they could and would be pretty decisive. They might seem like they're having trouble just being able to decide on things, even simple things like where do I want to get food from. It might seem like that becomes more stressful for them. And then the last one, recurrent thoughts of death or suicidal ideation. That can present in different ways. For some people, it's kind of just recurring thoughts of dying or thoughts of what if I weren't here, or I don't want to be here. Not so much that they're actively trying to harm themselves, but just kind of having those reoccurring thoughts about death. And then the suicidal ideation is when people kind of start to have thoughts of harming themselves or thoughts of really wanting to die. And of course, we get more concerned at that point with those thoughts. So those are some general signs of depression that you may see in your teen, and areas to kind of keep an eye on if you do notice any of that. For anxiety, some of the signs that may come up would be excessive worry. That's difficult to control. And again, worry sometimes is a natural thing that we all do. But if you notice in your teen that it seems over the top, or that it's happening way too often, or that they just can't seem to get a handle on it, that may be a sign that there's some more underlying anxiety going on. If they're feeling restless or keyed up a lot or on edge, that can be a sign of anxiety kind of lying under the surface, if they just feel like they cannot relax. And then along with that, being easily fatigued. So if they've got a lot of that restless, can't relax energy, that eventually takes a physical toll, and then it can lead to fatigue because your mind and your body are just so exhausted from being keyed up all the time. So that can be a sign as well, and not often that we think about associating with anxiety, but it can indeed be a sign. Difficulty concentrating or mind going blank, that can be a sign of anxiety. If, again, trouble focusing, getting distracted with thoughts of worry, or feeling like they can't think of things, like if they're asked a question and their mind just kind of goes blank and they can't answer something that typically they would be able to, that could be a sign that they're struggling. Irritability can come along with anxiety as well. I know we mentioned that with depression also. With anxiety, sometimes it looks like irritability or extreme crankiness, and sometimes that's coming out of that underlying worry or tension and feeling overwhelmed by that, and then it just comes out as like snapping at people or getting easily irritated and annoyed. Physically, muscle tension can come along with anxiety, just again, as a result of feeling restless and keyed up all the time. You may have shoulder tension, headaches, that kind of thing. And sleep disturbance can come along with anxiety as well. Sometimes people just can't get their minds to shut off at night, and so they have trouble relaxing and being able to fall asleep because of the anxiety. And then some other ways anxiety can be present, not for everyone, but sometimes in some more extreme ways. It may include panic attacks, which some people will describe as almost feeling like a heart attack, where their heart's racing, their chest may hurt, they may have trouble catching their breath. That can be a sign that there's some underlying anxiety, but it's coming out in the form of panic attacks. And there can be specific triggers, or they can happen for some folks kind of randomly and feel like they come out of nowhere. And agoraphobia, that is a fear of going out. So if someone becomes really anxious about leaving home, not in a way like I'm tired, I don't feel like it, but more of that there's a real kind of fear and anxiety there about leaving home. That can be a way that it shows up too. And there are some others, kind of outliers, also, but those are the main things that we look for. And I will say, too, that depression and anxiety often coexist, which sometimes seems a little counterintuitive because when we think of depression, we think of really low energy, and anxiety, we think of the restlessness and feeling keyed up. But they often can occur at the same time and kind of feed into each other. So if you notice someone has signs of both, that is fairly common, and often they will need treatment for both at the same time. And sometimes, as I mentioned earlier, there are some behaviors that teens tend to exhibit, and I say that very generally. There are always exceptions, but just kind of generally, sometimes teens seem a little moody as they're going through adolescence and puberty, and they may seem moody, they may seem cranky at times. Sleep schedules may get kind of messed up during those years, and sometimes that's just a normal part of adolescence. When we start to be concerned that it might be more than that is looking at intensity. How intense are the symptoms? Again, for example, when we talked about the guilt, excessive guilt, does it seem like it's appropriate for the situation, or is it more intense in that they're really feeling guilty about things that aren't their fault, or they're hanging on to it for long periods of time? And that goes into the next one. How long is it lasting? Is it just for a short period, or is it just situational, or do you notice that it's happening consistently or repeatedly over like 2 or 3 months? And then if you notice that, you may be looking more at depression or anxiety versus typical teen kinds of things. And then also watching out for physical symptoms. If they start to have serious sleep issues, not being able to sleep or sleeping too much over a period of time, again, the appetite issues or weight gain or weight loss, chronic headaches or stomach aches, those can all be physical signs of depression or anxiety. And if you notice they're happening over a long period of time, you might want to take a closer look at that. So what can you do as a parent or as an adult who's involved with teens and you're wanting to watch out for these things? The first step, and I think probably the most important, is just communicate with them. If you're noticing something, check in with them and ask them about it. Like, hey, I've noticed you've been taking a lot of naps lately. Are you feeling okay? Are you feeling more tired? Do you feel sick? Or if you notice they're not as talkative or they're isolating more, ask them how they're feeling. Like, you seem like you're not talking as much. Are you feeling down? How's your mood? Just ask them questions. And as teens, they may get annoyed or, you may get only one-word answers, but that can even give you information. So even if they seem irritated by it, just communicate and ask them and open that door for them to share. If you are concerned that there are some serious signs of depression or anxiety, talk to their doctor, and there may be medication options that could be helpful, or there may be therapy options, counseling, and perhaps your doctor can make a recommendation or a referral for a counselor or medication. Try and have them involved in healthy activities, and you don't need to push or force if they really seem dead set against it, or if you're trying to have them involved in something and they just seem miserable, I wouldn't say to force it, but encourage healthy activities like maybe going out for walks or hikes together, um, playing, having family activities like playing board games together and inviting them to participate if you notice that they're isolating, encouraging healthy teen social activities, which has been really hard with COVID. But as things start opening up, there will likely be more opportunities for that. And so encouraging them to connect with other adolescents in healthy ways, whether it's sports or clubs, interests that they have. Trying to keep a routine can be helpful. So trying to encourage them to go to bed at the same time every night and get up at the same time each morning. And that may look a little different during the summer when school's not in, and that's okay. But just kind of generally trying to keep a sleep routine and also a routine during the day, even if, again, if it's summer and they're just kind of relaxing, like maybe have some activities planned or, a certain time when you eat breakfast, and then if they have chore times, and then, like scheduled lunch, and just kind of staying on a routine can be helpful with regulating moods and anxiety. And then encourage or even practice with your teen some mindfulness or guided meditation exercises. And there are a ton of them online. YouTube is often a good resource if you just type in to the search bar guided meditation or guided imagery. You will find a whole slew of things that come up. There's also an app that's free out of UCLA. It's called UCLA Mindful, and it's a free app, and it has a whole bunch of guided exercises there practicing mindfulness and being in the present moment and kind of checking in with your body and those kinds of things. And that can be really helpful, especially for anxiety, and just kind of helping your mind to slow down and kind of getting a handle on that worry. And then Headspace is another app that has a lot of helpful tools on it. I think there is a fee for that one, but if you want to spend the money, there are some helpful resources on there as well. So those are just a few things that you can do as you're, if you're noticing signs in your teen, things that you can do to try to be helpful. And then, of course, with any kinds of mental health issues going on, we always want to be mindful of planning for emergencies in case someone does get to the point where they're feeling suicidal, like they actively want to harm themselves or actively, are talking about harming others and have a plan for that. Then obviously we would want to intervene for safety reasons at that point. And so resources for that would be going straight to the emergency room at the nearest hospital, and they can kind of assess the teen at that point and see what symptoms they're having, whether or not they seem like they can stay safe, if they maybe need to go into the hospital for a little bit. That's a great resource in the case of a crisis and an emergency. Locally in Stanton, Valley Community Services Board has an emergency services department that's on call 24/7. And if you're having a mental health emergency, You can call them also to consult, and they'll kind of assess what's happening and help you decide, do I need to go to the hospital? Do I need to go to the emergency room? Or can I make a plan to stay safe at home and follow up with my therapist or my doctor? And they'll kind of help walk you through that. And then also, if there is an emergency situation or a crisis and you do have to call VCSB or go to the emergency room, then also contact your teen's doctor or therapist just to kind of let them know what's happening, and see if they may even have some helpful input or recommendations at that point for intervention. But just let them know what's going on so that they can be as helpful as they can. So I hope this information is helpful. This is just a very, very brief overview of what can be a really, really large topic. But please feel free to contact us if you have questions or concerns, and I hope, again, that these resources are helpful. Thank you.